When Pierce sent me this video, I wasn't really sure what to make of it. Super Punch-Out is a game that, while I have heard of it, I barely know anything about it. However, he did let me know that this video series basically covers the game mechanics behind it. And while it's not video game lore that we usually cover here on the channel, I do enjoy taking a look at the behind the scenes stuff, or like how a particular thing came to be when it comes to like developing the game. So I think this could be a pretty neat exploration into a series that I know very little about. But of course, before we get into things, make sure to go support Designing For. Link to that is at the very top of the description, as always. The man himself. Would not want to meet him in the streets.
Hey, it's been a while since I last seen you. Got a haircut by the looks of it.
I wish I did.
Oh, me? Oh, you know, I'm as good as ever. Ready as I'll ever be. So, something tells me you want to take on the world again. I got that right? Yeah. Don't worry. I know the feeling, kid. You're armed, you're ready, you're dangerous. So come on, kid. One more time. Let's you and me make history. Nintendo's gambit to recreate their digital boxing series on the NES had paid off. Through a combination of technical wizardry to...
there it is. Okay, I have seen this before. I think there were like small clips of this actually during the Paper Mario like wrestling video, or I could be thinking of another Designing For video. But this game is a classic.
Get such hulking sprites to function. The challenge of a lifetime for especially the American audience through the invitation to get in the ring with Mike Tyson. And intense gameplay where a split-second dodge would determine glory or defeat, Punch-Out would remain a cornerstone of Nintendo's brand and image, at least in the Western market.
Really?
And was a bona fide success story. But
Jesus Christ! For such a simple game? I suppose back in the day it was way more exciting, and I mean, you also have the Mike Tyson name to go along with it. But when you think Nintendo, this isn't really what you think of. At least for me, and either that or I'm just ignorant.
But time moved on from Little Mac's ascent to the top. Nintendo's contract with Tyson expired, and future controversies and incarcerations from Kid Dynamite presumably kept the company from pursuing a follow-up with him.
You know, he could kill you. He could kill all of us. I think sometimes we forget that that's Mike Tyson.
But moreover, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out simply wasn't supposed to be as good of a game as it ended up being. Many concessions had to be taken from the monstrous, mobile, size-warping boxers from the arcade classic, leaving the WVBA's finest as hulking of monstrosities as they could be on the NES, but relatively static in movement. This, of course, created an incredible new system of intimidation and pattern recognition that would be praised for decades. But Nintendo had never recaptured...
Wait a minute. Intimidation and pattern recognition. How are we going to link this to other video games? Because, like, just using those two words makes me think of the basics of Souls combat. Where learning the pattern of a particular boss is the reason why you try it over and over again, and really the only way that you're going to be able to get past that. I suppose one could argue that having some form of pattern recognition for the player to grab hold onto is what makes a good video game boss.
That action boxing feel of their original arcade cabs. And as time left the kid who felled the baddest man on the planet as a cherished memory, a new injection of superpower allowed for a new generation to discover what had been lost before. And this new jolt wouldn't be intimidating. No, it would be empowering.
What the heck?
Super Punch-Out came in swinging compared to its NES predecessor. Opponents could back off, dodge, weave, and tower
Jesus.
over Little Mac in ways not possible on the older hardware. Fights took place all over the ring, foes dancing from side to side or getting launched into
Bro, imagine if boxing matches were this exciting. With people just flying across the ring.
the corner with a well-timed power hit. Little Mac didn't look like a sassy lost child trying to beat up mountains of muscle anymore, with a decent amount of height and a semi-translucent body to see who you had to beat up through. There were character voices and ring announcements done by Charles Martinet, one of his first gigs for Nintendo after his obscure debut for their most beloved character, Predator Donkey Kong.
I was just gonna whisper sweet nothings in her ear like this, Bruce. Donkey Kong Country, baby. Uniracers, baby. Stunt Race FX, baby. Are you getting hot yet? Tetris 2. Oh, sweet nothings. Super Punch-Out. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
And while Patter
What the fuck was I looking at? What was that? What in the world? I feel like Nintendo was a very different company back then, weren't they? Oh man, I forgot what game it was. Didn't they have like some? Oh, it was Bayonetta with the Playboy, right? And that was actually an official partnership that they had. Jeez, times have changed, haven't they?
instant knockdown chances and signature moves obviously still existed. Super promised to be a whole different game from Tyson. Mac wasn't sitting around waiting for the exact right moment to strike. You would be given exactly one 3-minute round to knock out your opponent, or they would score a technical victory.
Time up.
Dodging his punch, then counterpunching wasn't the key to victory. It was a simple technical tool as a whole new era of ruthless aggression swept the Punch-Out world. No game in this series is quite as active or quite as action-packed as Super is. And while you've got a good head on your shoulders, I'm noticing that your opponents all seem to have quartermen, but yours is noticeably absent.
Where am I?
But don't worry, we can take you the distance again. We're going 16 rounds, taking on every single challenger the WVBA has to toss at you, breaking them down one by one until you shine brighter than the belt around your waist. You see through these suckers' intimidation, so the onus is on you to keep up with your fellow sportsmen and usher in this new, unparalleled generation of momentum. Let's keep it clean.
Bro, there's just something about this era of music, this 8-bit music, that I find incredibly charming. Like, I like it a lot. Or, like, I love it when a game has 8-bit versions of their soundtrack. Completely blew my mind when we had the seamless switch between the 8-bit version and the original song in Nier Automata, whenever you swapped into a different game mode in the middle of combat.
This is Gabby J. And he has a dream. For decades, he served as the waiter at a small cafe next to the Eiffel Tower. But years of complacency eventually stirred something deeper inside of him, causing his psyche to snap and pursue a career in professional boxing. He enrolled in the finest boxing institution France had to offer, the Glass Joe Boxing School, and earned his first win by defeating the school's namesake in a fight. With Glass Joe well and truly beaten, Jay would go on to prove himself as the greatest French boxer with a 5-letter name and 3-letter last name with the initials GJ, who uses a taunt punch and weighs exactly 110 pounds. The world
The greatest one
seen.
of this
And
specific.
in this role,
Oh,
Jay
God.
sucks.
Oh.
Look, I don't mean to be too harsh on the guy, but he's 56 years old with a 1 in 99 record, living out the tail end of a midlife crisis that went on way too long. I've stated before that it's likely a lot of starting players will lose to Glass Joe in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, and I stand by that assessment. The combination of Joe's alternating defenses and Mac's limited 20 points of stamina means that treating Punch-Out like a typical brawler is going to get you gassed quickly, and makes Joe's incredibly slow punches have weird timing that you actually have to learn timing windows for.
Bro, I completely understand that. There are certain games I played where the beginning bosses are just way tougher than the later ones simply because they are slower. For whatever damn reason, they hold their attacks until the heat death of the universe, and so you, who tried to react to it on time, actually end up not having the iframes to dodge out of whatever attack they're doing. And so you get curb stomped. Of course, eventually you learn to slow down and not react immediately whenever the yellow light flashes for you to dodge, which is an absolute sham, by the way, in some games. But still, they can be very tricky. And I think the Dark Souls games use that to their fullest extent, where I'm sure that there are some particular bosses that have moves and they're quick, and then all of a sudden they wind up and then they slow down. Just to throw you off your game. Or even like in Hollow Knight, there was this one boss where you had to fight two characters at once. I think one was like a giant beetle that the other character rode on. But essentially, one would be incredibly quick and the other would be incredibly slow. And so you couldn't get used to the pace because both of them moved at different paces. Learning the rhythm of a fight is very important. And I think for the most part, it's all just a matter of trial and error.
Glass Joe effectively demonstrates exactly what his game is about and the minimum requirements a new player needs to get good at it. And then you go on to humiliate the guy forevermore.
Oh, shit.
Gabby J does not have this. There is no stamina limitation in Super Punch-Out. You're on a strict time limit to knock these suckers out. You don't have time to be tired. And his guard is so bad that, honestly, you can just mash and you'll probably beat him.
Poor guy.
Even Gabby J's Quarterman, a new addition to Super Punch-Out who calls for the strongest moves their boxers can toss out, pleads with him to catch his breath and not burn out instantly. A move that has the potential to heal him, countered by simply throwing out punches and making sure that he can't. In every way, Glass Joe succeeded as a pathetic opponent you'd feel humiliated to lose to. Gabby J has failed, utterly inept at everything other than eating hits. But when you beat him, something interesting pops up. A high score table of how fast folks have beaten him before. And while you beat Jay pretty handily and... seriously, Wario, 2 minutes to clear this? Don's time downing the geezer in 26 seconds is a bit hard to beat just flailing around aimlessly. And this is Gabby J's value to the game of Punch-Out.
No, this poor guy's value is to get beat up. The quicker he gets beat up, the better you learn how to play the game. No! I'm so glad I'm not a video game character. I bet you I'd end up at something like this.
Perfect introduction to speedy, score attack style clears. While you can simply mash Jay to death, he did pick up how to alternate his guard from Glass Joe, letting the player experiment with their punches, potentially learning that each of Mac's 4 punches have slightly different timing and strength. Getting deep into this lets the player experiment with the power meter. Each successful hit landed, building up this gauge until it's fully charged.
What that was.
And when you land that super punch, you don't cash anything out. Opportune star punches at exactly the right time are a thing of the past. Mac remaining in a super-powered state to slug it out as long as he remains untouched, stacking absolutely devastating blow after blow in every single opening he creates. Keep at it long enough, and you might even find a secret dizzy animation, something that only triggers if you absolutely floor your opponent right out of the gate, and leads to an instant knockdown if you take advantage of it.
Yo! Oh! This is really cool. Of how we're figuring out ways to teach the player in-game mechanics without necessarily just having a massive tutorial that stops you and tells you exactly what you should be doing. I don't know if you can necessarily call this intuitive, but for those who are paying attention, it can certainly serve as a cool little Easter egg. And honestly, I'd love for more games to do this, considering how invasive some of the tutorials can be nowadays. Granted, sometimes they have to be because some people they're not going to see it. That's why we have the yellow paint everywhere, so that people know where they can jump to. But I understand, it's pretty hard to achieve that without any telltale signs. Accessibility is also a thing that devs have to come up with. But regardless of all that, this is really cool.
And, of course, hitting Jay right in the gut during his signature taunt punch will bring him down just like how his teacher was toppled 7 years ago. Jay may be a total wimp in actually intimidating Mac, but for teaching the compounding momentum that Super Punch-Out can offer when you're really dominating it, he is a masterclass in figuring out how to most effectively dismantle another man in seconds flat. Carry that sense of victory with you. He's long forgotten what it feels like, and you'll need it for the long road ahead.
Bear hugger. Of course, he's from Canada.
Bear hugger!
Oh, that's a big boy! Lumbering in from the Canadian wilderness where he fights animals for fun, Bear Hugger is a massive leap forward in stature compared to the withering waiter you just beat up. The first opponent from the arcade Super Punch-Out, Hugger's glad to leave as large of an impression as possible with his one simple trick: being too fat to feel pain. Any punches to Bear Hugger's stomach will deal no damage, the Saskatoon slugger mocking you for even trying, and eating up 2 precious seconds just to taunt you every time you bludgeon his belly. This gives him a theoretically perfect defense, being
Bear Hugger has no weaknesses. But now we're getting into the video game boss design philosophy, right? Where each level is trying to teach the player a skill that they're going to need in order to beat the next level. And ultimately, hopefully, by the end, this all culminates into the perfect fighter to fight against the final boss with all the skills that you've obtained by beating everybody else up until now. This is just one of those other ways to create the satisfying loop that I was talking about in the previous Designing for video that we did.
able to guard his upper half with his gloves while his gut remains an immovable object. Hugger's only moments of vulnerability are when he acts. Swiping at his belly during a taunt actually will stun the guy for an easy combo, and his jab and hook are relatively well telegraphed and easy to avoid.
Yeah.
Past his simple gimmick, there really isn't much to Bear Hugger as you slowly chop him down and send him packing.
Timber!
But when you beat Super Punch-Out, this fella's in such a good mood, he'll go, "Oh, I heard you can beat me in 17 seconds if you're real good." Which, while maybe the weirdest flex I've ever heard, taking Canadian hospitality to a whole new level there, bud,
Poser!
does work as good as any lure to get players hooked on taking him down. In order to truly best the bear, you've got to use your jab like an actual jab. Your weakest and quickest punch being used to keep up pressure and goad your opponent into facing your tempo.
Hey, exactly the same mechanic as in a fighting game. You want to be using your quick buttons that have a very quick startup and also very fast recovery in order to hit confirm before you do your combo. Makes total sense. It's also another form of a fighting game.
Hugger loves following up an actual threat to his face with his bear clap. A move that used to be an instant KO in his first appearance, now proving to be strong, but hardly a death sentence. Naturally, an attack that comes from both sides can't be dodged to the left or right. But if you
dodge
duck
backwards?
you're left with a
you
whole
can duck it.
bounty of punches to
Okay.
tear into the bear with. By far the
Nice.
longest stun period Hugger can offer. Mastering this bait is the key to hitting that elusive 17-second time.
Yeah, I thought so. This is such good design, though. We see plenty of bosses in video games nowadays who also have something quite similar, where they become vulnerable after you do an action that is guaranteed to make them do a particular move. Because ultimately, they will have some level of RNG to the moves that they select, depending on their health level or like where the player is from them. But definitely the most vulnerable is when you can guarantee that they're going to be doing something. In fact, that's very likely the kind of system that the Monster Hunter speedrunners usually exploit. Like, they know all the moves, they know all the animations of what a monster will do, and so with a high enough probability, they can assume where it will be and thus land their TCS on it.
As if you duck the clap just as tightly as possible, you can sneak in an extra 5th punch and make the guy taunt more often afterward, leading to the fastest route to dizzy this piece of male perfection.
She scores!
Bear Hugger is, quite
14
honestly, probably a
seconds,
much
hell
better
yeah.
tutorial fight than Gabby J when it comes to Super's unique mechanics, necessitating ducking, differentiating your punches, and figuring out how to command the pace of a match to keep your fists flying. Leave the gentle giant in the corner where he belongs, and march on to what will hopefully be a little more of a struggle.
His Hurricane Rush.
Piston Hurricane!
Dusting off his gloves from the original Punch-Out after lending out his name to Honda for a brief stint, Piston Hurricane blows back into town to fight because his home was destroyed by a hurricane and he wandered the streets of Havana until becoming a boxer and named himself after what made him homeless. Piston, we're a 17-year-old from the Bronx. We're not emotionally equipped for that.
Oh, Piston, no! I'm not gonna feel good beating this poor dude. He's been through it, man. But then it's also the struggle of, like, if you go easy on him, you're basically disrespecting him. It's a type of athlete that you can't help but cheer for, you know?
Hurricane's got the same signature skills you might be familiar with from Honda. The ability to actually dodge with any level of confidence, faster fists than what came before, and his signature rush, launching a flurry of blows at you with precious little time to dodge. Seems like a rougher customer than the
Cool.
pair of midlife crises you punched out before. Someone to maybe
this one's
keep
gonna
you
teach
off
you to
your
dodge.
rhythm. However, there's one specific philosophy that Hurricane wants to teach, and if you master it, this whole match is gonna be a breeze.
Blocking?
What goes up must come down. Specifically, there are 2 states your glove can be in during a Punch-Out match. Pressing no buttons keeps them guarding your gut, and holding up protects your face. This is true for both your guard and your attacks, and all of your opponents operate in the same way, Canadian roadblocks notwithstanding, letting you sneak in a few quick punches if you manage to take a swipe opposite of your opponent's guard. However, your adversaries are also checking out your gloves, adjusting their guard to match. And Hurricane is an especially slow learner at this. If you manipulate his guard down, his face is easy pickings for a flurry of jabs, almost as many as if you managed to
Interesting.
stun him. This leads to building up your power meter insanely quickly. And if you've been taking headshots non-stop, Hurricane is eventually gonna leave his body wide open for a super hook to blow him away. His devastating
Gotcha.
Hurricane Rush, exact same principle. Piston always starts with a high shot followed by a low blow, alternating as long as he manages to get a hit in. While this is dodgeable with proper timing, it's much easier to simply alternate
Just
your
block,
guard
yeah.
up and down. You don't have a stamina penalty in this game, so go wild! After 6 block shots, he'll realize how behind the curve he is and go for an uppercut, which is super telegraphed even if you didn't
Yeah.
know it was coming.
And that's
While
when he's
Piston
vulnerable.
may have actual boxing fundamentals down and can actually dodge some of your attacks when his quarterman asks to show off some fancy footwork, his actual offense is just too slow and his ring psychology way too weak to keep up with you.
Bro, I love this, man. This is like a direct comparison for me, at least, for learning how to play the 2D fighting games. But of course, instead of reading a CPU, you're reading your actual opponent. And it's crazy how they were able to simulate this in this game. It came out even before the 2000s. It's really the same concept. Like, your opponent goes for a low, and then you crouch block. You crouch block for a little bit, and then you know for a fact that they're going to try and hit you with an overhead, so you can predict it, when it's going to come out, and then you just stand block, and then you counter that, and take back your turn. That simple. But just the way that they were able to onboard any new person to this game, to these different mechanics, while also just being a fun little punch-out game, you know? Really shows you how much thought that they put into each and every single character, and how they were paced out from each other.
Stay on the offensive. Outwit this airhead and claim a quick victory as you aim to take down the minor league champion.
Bald Bull.
Each of the minor, major, and world circuit titles is being held by a returning boxer from the NES Punch-Out. The only stalwarts from that game making their way into the sequel, and the entirety of the game's box art, incidentally. Move over, new stars! Returning to the ring to make your life absolutely miserable is Bald Bull, the most recurring character in the Punch-Out franchise. Bull's slowed down a bit since his time on the NES, losing his signature rolling jabs in favor of some more telegraphed punches, but is by far the most challenging fight the minor leagues have to offer. Bull is all about messing with your sense of momentum, wildly flailing about, ducking and juking before releasing a flurry of blows, or crouching down to bait out a dodge before going in for an uppercut.
Bro. Damn. We even have feints in this too. That's really awesome, and also, I think I get my ass kicked by this. These are the mechanics that I usually fall for all the time when I'm fighting a boss for the first time. It's like, how do I know that it's actually winding up for an attack, or it's simply just moving, or trying to make me dodge? At that point, I feel like you just have to get used to the different techniques that he's going to be using. Keep your wits about you, and only dodge when absolutely necessary.
He's got a tight guard that'll easily deflect most of your punches thrown out carelessly. And of course, he's got his signature bull charge primed and ready. Not only is this still an instant knockdown no matter how much stamina Max got left in the tank, but this mad bull has two different timings to his charge to send you to the mat.
Two different timings?
And look, to this point, as long as you understand the basic lessons of learn where to hit, learn how to duck, and learn what your two guard states are, you can beat those last three guys through mashing and attrition.
This one,
But
no.
this is a straight-up bullfight. The Turkish tanker refuses to be KO'd early, insisting that you bring him to the mat 3 times, no matter how hard you hit him. And he's
oh my god, and that simulates like the different phases of a boss fight. The fact that the charge up actually has 2 different momentums on the same character, probably also in the same phase, is kind of evil, not gonna lie.
glad to spam his signature technique the closer to defeat he gets, ready to close up rounds in an instant. Bald Bull is a wall for new players. If you give the veteran respect, that is. Bald Bull wants you to take this fight at his pace, but the more you're willing to interrupt it, the more Bull is forced to play at your own. The only one of Bull's moves that can't be reacted to immediately is his jab combo after shuffling his torso around, which can be easily blocked by holding up the moment he starts his shuffle. Most of Bull's moves are so slow that they can be interrupted with one of your own punches, with Bull especially being vulnerable to right hooks. Even if he blocks it, age has definitely caught up with him, and he's not going to be able to get out an attack of his own before you jam him with another one.
Welcome to the real world!
You gotta learn today!
Time to learn! You wanna learn today!
His only real solution to an all-out assault is the Bull
Perfect
Charge. And while that's fearsome, if you end up dodging the move enough, Bull will lose confidence in his finisher and never bring it out again. But it's hardly
Really?
sportsmanlike to crush a man's spirit passively.
Well, no, this is a fight. You do what you have to. It is very much both a physical and a mental game, all at the same time. You hit your opponent with a bunch of lows, and so they start crouch blocking. And then whenever they crouch block, you hit them with the overhead, so then they try to predict the overhead. And then when they try to stand block to predict the overhead, you throw them. You alternate between these three, and you'll see success. It's not just about knowing how to do the highest damaging combo. It's about understanding what your opponent is thinking and how you can counter that. I wonder how we started off learning these mechanics and putting them into the game. I suppose they had to have interviewed the boxers themselves, or maybe people working on the game were really big fans and had a deep understanding of how fighting actually works. I suppose you would have to, because we're essentially trying to emulate that, so yeah, that makes sense.
Why not shatter his body along with his confidence? The Bull Charge does have two different timings to trip you up,
but you can
Bald
punch him
Bull
out of it.
also telegraphs which variant he's going to use through the number of hops he takes getting into position. Count along with him and throw a hook right into his gut one count early, and he's gonna be the one eating the mat from an instant knockdown instead.
Ooh. Bro, using your opponent's momentum against them. That is an instant knockout. Oh man, I want to bring up an example of a monster from Monster Hunter, but I forget their name. There is a way that you can tell exactly which way that they're going to swipe depending on the movements that they did in order to set that up. So yeah, while they do have different variations, I'm so glad that there is some way to tell. That eventually you can learn that. This is such good game design.
There's no need for this old bull to slow you down. Crush his dreams of ever tasting the gold again as you claim your own, becoming the champion of the minor league.
Piece of cake.
Super Punch-Out's first circuit is a bit more lax than Tyson's, but should give you a good understanding of the road ahead. From the majors on, you aren't going to be coasting around opponents there to teach you mechanics. These are real killers, using every technique at their disposal to take you out. Get your times on the first 4 down low, make sure you've cleared the circuit without any losses before moving on, and get ready as we punch our ticket through.
I'm assuming for like the true ending or something? Or like a secret boss? Okay, you know what? This is awesome. I'm so glad that you sent this to me, Pierre, because I always want to see like the history of video games and how things came to be. And I can already see the inner workings of like what modern fighting games use as their basis already in here. Obviously, probably not like a direct inspiration. There are definitely older fighting games than this that they might have taken a look at. But still, the similar game mechanics being displayed here is just ingenious. To other people, this may be kind of simple and expected, but I don't know, I just like seeing it. In a way, it's like history playing out right before my eyes, and that excites me to be here and experience something that I wasn't able to because I wasn't even born back then. But yeah, dudes, if you're into this kind of stuff like I am, Pierre has another part 2, and I believe like around 5 years ago or something, he had an original series that he did on this. You guys should go and check those out on his channel. I'll probably drop a reaction to the next part sometime after this one. But yeah, man, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed your time here. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you in the next one.